This conference will now be recorded.
Am I audible now? Okay, great. So let's start with our session for today, and we'll see the agenda first, and then we'll go through with some kind of basic implementation of Playwright. How do we install the Playwright? What is the prerequisite, and so on. So the agenda first for this Playwright workshop will be this Playwright workshop. The first agenda like the complete agenda for this workshop is first to understand the architecture of Playwright. Second, we'll also understand what is the advantage that we have in terms of Playwright. So advantage of Playwright over the other tools that we have in the market like Selenium and Cypress, which is like famous in the market. And next, we'll go through with like installation of the Playwright and prerequisite. When I say like prerequisite, like what is basically we require in terms of starting the Playwright with either JavaScript, TypeScript. Okay, and then we'll also go through with basics of automation in terms of using Playwright. Okay, so these are the agenda that we have for today. When I say like basics of, it can consist of like form filling, uploading files, and we'll see like if time permits, we'll also see like few of the other things where we can see like how do we handle or how do we do a drag and drop kind of using Playwright. And if after that also if the time permits, we'll see like how do we handle the multiple elements using multiple windows using Playwright. Okay, so these are the agendas for today. We'll try to complete as much as possible in our workshop today. Okay, so before that, I just wanted to understand from you people, like how many of you are currently working on automation, and how many of you like have worked on any of the automation in the previous part, or you are currently working. Yes, you could just say like yes or no. That should be okay. If any one of you have worked on automation or currently working on automation, any tools can be fine, any technology can be fine. Okay, anyone else? Okay, great, great. Okay, nice. So I'll consider like most of the people have worked on Selenium. Like few of the people have worked on Selenium, and most of the people either have worked on manual testing or have worked on some other tools. or technologies. Okay, so let's try to understand the architecture first of the Playwright, and then we'll go through the advantages, like going through with few of the advantages. So I've like created one of a document which is a complete architecture of the Playwright. I'll share it with few people as well after our session, um, after like our completion of the workshop. So first thing is like as we see over here, in every tools and technology, either you take it as uh, Playwright using JavaScript, TypeScript, or Selenium using Java, or any other tools and technology, we'll basically be having two things which is mandatory. One is tools that we will have to use. Let's say if you're using Playwright, then you have to work with Playwright. If you're using working on Selenium, then you have to use Selenium. And then second is a technology that we have to choose. So let's say if you people have worked on Selenium, I believe like most of the people have worked on using Selenium using Java, or Selenium using JavaScript. In terms of here, also in like Playwright using either types JavaScript, TypeScript, Java, Python, and so on. There used to be a client and server based architecture. The similar things that we have seen in terms of the Java using Selenium using Java as well. So here also in terms of Playwright, the architecture is same, which is client and server based architecture. What is client? Client used to be an editor where we write the code. So in terms of if you people have worked on Selenium and Java, you might have worked by using IntelliJ, or you might have worked on some other editor. In terms of Playwright or the JavaScript or TypeScript, if you have worked on earlier, then you might be using Visual Studio Code. Editor, that is something known as an editor where we write the code. So this is like IntelliJ where we write a Java code. Basically, most of the people follow uh, IntelliJ for Eclipse or IntelliJ for writing Java code. And in terms of JavaScript and TypeScript, whenever we go for JavaScript and TypeScript, we basically follow a Visual Studio Code. This is an editor. So this is basically your client where we are trying to write the code. Okay, so that is known as a client, and a server is something known as what are the tools that we are trying to use. So in terms of Selenium, there is Selenium standalone server. In terms of Playwright also, we have a server which have been deployed on Node.js. Okay, I'll talk about what is Node.js in the later part of our session. But it is also one of our architecture where we have a client where we write the code, and then server where client interacts with the server to automate whatever we try to write the code in terms of writing the test automation. That will basically interact with the server, and then server in the sense whatever the tools that we are using, either Selenium or Playwright. Example, here we are trying to use Playwright. So I'm so sorry. So wherever we write our code, that will first connect to the server. That means with a Playwright server, and that Playwright server will execute our test on different browser, whatever we require in terms of connect, like executing our test on different browser. Let's say Chrome, Firefox, Safari, and so on. Okay, so that's where I said like it is an architecture of a client and server where client and server interacts based on WebSocket connection. Okay, so what is WebSocket connection? So whenever we hear a term known as WebSocket is a long-lived connection. What is meant by long-lived connection is, let's say we have one test case where we are trying to perform login into an application. So what we have to do is we basically have to follow certain set of steps, right? Like launch the URL, fill username, password, click on login, and then you will move to the home page. So these are, let's say, a login step that we have to validate. In terms of if you people have worked on Selenium, and you might be knowing like Selenium is a client, again a client and server based architecture, which basically interacts between the client and server using a HTTP connection. Okay, basically Selenium interacts with from the client and server. There will be an HTTP connection. I'll talk about what is a difference between HTTP connection and WebSocket in a while, like in next 5 minutes. So in terms of WebSocket, it says that this is basically a long-lived connection. That means, as I have described, like we have four lines of script. Example, let's say I'll just show you the code that I have written in our previous demo. So there is some, let's say there is these 3 lines of code are there, right? So what happened in general is whenever you launch this particular test, you probably might not understand what is these lines of code. That's fine. I'll later explain you what are all these things. So whenever you try to execute this code, first thing will happen is this client will try to connect with the Playwright server. So the code that we have written, the test case that we have written over here, this will try to connect with server first. Okay, and that server and server connection will happen over WebSocket connection. Okay, so what happened in general is whenever it tries to connect, tries to open a new page, or tries to basically open a browser, at that point of time, first connection will happen between client and server. And as soon as your code is running, the connection between the client and server will be alive every time. Like, let's say if you have 10 test cases over there, currently we have only one, but let's say if you have 100 test cases over there. So for all the 100 test case, the connection between the client and server will still be in active mode itself. That is what known as WebSocket connection. That means it's a long-lived connection. Whereas when we talk about HTTP connection, as in terms of Selenium, so what happened in terms of HTTP connection, it is basically a short-lived connection. That means, let's say you have a one line of code which is launching the URL. Okay, so at the time of launching the URL, your client will connect with the server and will launch the URL. After launching the URL, the connection will be terminated. Okay, that means for the next step, that whatever we have to execute, again client will try to connect with the server. Let's say in that case, if you have 100 lines of code in one particular test itself, then there will be 100 times different HTML connection between a client and server. In terms of Selenium is basically depend on architecture of HTTP connection between a client and server. So in terms of Selenium, if we talk about, if you have 100 lines of code in one particular test case, or let's say 10 lines of code in one particular test case, that means 10 times the HTTP connection will happen between a client and server. That is why we sometimes we observe like Selenium used to be a very slow in terms of execution. Whereas if you talk about Playwright depends on the WebSocket connection, which at the beginning of the running of the test case, it will connect from the client and server using the WebSocket, which says that it will never terminate unless and until the test case completely get executed. Okay, that means only once the connection will establish between client and server, and as soon as your test case running, it will keep on running on the same connection. Whereas in terms of Selenium using any technologies, there will be a different HTML connection for each and every lines of code. So if you have 10 lines of code, there will be 10 times HTTP connection will be made between client and server. Okay, so that is a major advantage of using Playwright. Because of this connection, like which is WebSocket connection, Playwright is much faster in terms of execution because it do not require every time a new connection as in terms of the HTTP connection that we require like for every lines of execution of the code. Okay, so this is the only reason where Playwright execution used to be much faster than Selenium. We'll try to understand that how it is when we go through with the advantage of Playwright. Let's now go through in detail of the architecture. So here I've also mentioned like primary reason of Playwright speed, especially when compared to Selenium architecture, is Playwright makes use of WebSocket instead of HTTP connection. Okay, so WebSocket, whenever anyone asks you like what is WebSocket, what is difference between WebSocket connection and HTTP connection? So WebSocket connection is a long-lived connection where as soon as your test case are running, the connection between client and server will keep on running automatically for each and every lines of code. Whereas in terms of HTTP connection, for every single line of code, the client will try to connect with the server for each and every lines of execution of the code. Okay. So in terms of architecture, if you see over here, it is very simple. We have one editor, which is also known as client. When we select editor, we write the code using Java, JavaScript, TypeScript, or any of the programming language that we can select in terms of Playwright. We have a flexibility of choosing any kind of language, as we have flexibility in terms of Selenium. Then we have a server, which is also known as a Playwright, which depends on the Node.js server. Node.js is basically we have JRE, which is also known as Java Runtime Environment, which used to run the Java code, which basically execute Java code. In the same way, Node.js is known as JavaScript Runtime Environment, which used to run JavaScript code. Basically, it's used to execute JavaScript code. Okay, so Node.js is exactly similar to the JRE that we have in terms of Java. If you have not worked on any tools and technology previously, do not worry for that. And then we have a browser which comes into picture where we try to run our code. Okay, so the initiation start with, like, whenever we start execution of the code, first client will try to connect with server, and as soon as the connection uh, um, happen between the client and server, all the test case will start executing on the browser that we have selected for execution. Okay, in a general term, if we talk about how does it happen, is like we write our code using any of the tools and technology, and that code will be converted into the JSON format. This is also similar in terms of Selenium as well, where all the codes, whatever the language that we use, everything that we write inside, let's say .java or .js classes or files, will first be converted into JSON. Why it happen in general is because we write our code using some technology, let's say Java or JavaScript, whereas website will be developed using some other technologies. It can be by using CSS selector, CSS. It can be by using HTML, JavaScript, and so on. So in general, whatever the code that we write, our browser will never able to understand directly. So that's where we have some server in between to to convert our code into the JSON format, and so that, like, our browser, whenever we try to execute on any of the browser, will be able to understand our code, whatever we try to write. Anyone is asking any questions? Okay. Okay. So that's what happened. Like, that is what the use of server, which converts our like, there used to be a connection between a client and server so that it will be executed on the browser. But main reason used to be like it converts our code, whatever the programming language that we follow, it converts our code into the JSON format, and that JSON format will be understandable by our browser, whatever the browser that we try to execute our code. Okay, so if we talk about the complete process, how the architecture works is, or how the test execution happen is, first, it start with a WebSocket connection request. It's sent from the client and server. So as I said earlier, whenever we start executing the code, the first a request will be sent from the client and server for a connection. If everything goes well, then there will be a connection accepted between the client and server. That means a client and server architecture will be connected between, like, our code editor and then the server with that means a Playwright server. And then if the connection is successful, then acknowledgement will be sent by server to the client. And then again, all the test steps that we have written will execute on the same connection. There will not be a termination of the connection in between. All the test cases will be executed on the same connection for their execution. And once it completed, like every execution and every test case have been completed, then after that, the connection will be terminated between the client and server. So this is one of a major reason where Playwright is much faster in terms of execution than Selenium, because Selenium try to connect between the client and server on for each and every lines of execution, whereas Playwright connects only one, and it will be terminated after completion of all the test case execution. Okay, so this says that this architecture is in, like, in terms of Selenium, Selenium uses HTTP protocol, which is connection. What happened in that is the server establish a connection that is accepted and acknowledge. The same step will happen. First, it will try to connect with the client and server, but this connection will last only for that particular request. That is what I was talking about. For each and every lines of execution, client will try to connect with server. And that takes a few seconds, few milliseconds of time. And that's where Selenium sometimes takes a uh, very larger amount of time in terms of execution. If you have more than 100 test case, 100 or 200 test case, you might have observed in your previous practice or execution kind of. And these are the flow that I was just trying to make you understand. Like first, establish a connection will happen between client and server. Script will be executed. All the results will be connected, and then at the end, the connection will be terminated. So this is a general, a basic architecture, which is again depend on the client and server. But the only difference between if you talk about like Playwright and Selenium architecture is in terms of Playwright architecture, we have in terms of Selenium architecture, we have one more layer known as web drive, like browser driver. So what will happen in terms of browser driver is, let me open one more document. Just give me a 30 seconds of time. I'll quickly open. So in terms of Selenium architecture, what will happen is you'll see that there is something called known as browser driver. What happened in terms of Selenium is whenever we write our code, there will be a connection between a client and the server. That means a Selenium standalone server using HTTP that we have just discussed. But there will be one browser driver, like browser driver as well. For Chrome, we have a Chrome driver. For Firefox, we have Bcode driver, and so on. So what will happen is whenever we try to run our code, the code will get converted into the JSON format, and that code will be given to the driver, specific browser driver. That means if we are trying to execute our code on Chrome browser, then Chrome driver, then the code, whatever the test that we write, like whatever the test case that we write or the test automation that we have written, will first be given to the browser driver. In terms of Chrome, it will be given to the Chrome driver, and this Chrome driver will try to execute our code on the browser on Chrome. Again, when there will be a response, let's say we are trying to get the text from an element, then again at the time of execution, this browser, web browser like a Chrome browser example, will send the response to the browser driver, which is Chrome driver, and this Chrome driver will send us back the result. Whereas in terms of Playwright test automation will directly execute on the browser. So let's say if we are trying to get the text from an element, then what will happen is we start running the code. It will directly run on the browser, and browser will directly respond us back to directly to the client. That means we do not have any third party layer, which is known as browser driver. Okay, this is also one of a major reason where Playwright automation used to be much faster in terms of Selenium. Example, if uh, let's say we have started running our test case, and from here, from the client, wherever we have written the code, to the browser driver, it is taking 1 second, and from browser driver to running the code on the browser, it is taking one more second. Example, let's say again, whenever we have to get the response, then this browser is taking 1 second to send us the response to the browser driver, and then this browser driver is again taking one more second to send us back the response of the element. So in overall process, it is taking basically 4 seconds of time to get the element. Example I'm talking about. In general, it will happen in a milliseconds. But I'm just trying to give you an example. So in overall execution, it takes 4 seconds of time. Whereas if you talk about in terms of Playwright, as Playwright directly execute the code on the browser without having any third party layer over here, which is browser driver. So let's say if once we start execution, if it is taking 1 second of time from from going to the client to the browser, and then again getting the response from browser to the client, it is again taking 1 second. At that point of time, in overall execution of the test case, it will just take 2 seconds, whereas in terms of Selenium, it is basically taking 4 seconds of time. So there also we can observe one difference in terms of the execution. Okay. If anyone wants to ask any kind of question, you can just stop me in between. I might not be able to see if you are trying to send me a chat message over here. I would also request you people to share your name and WhatsApp number so that I can share with you people like these documents, whatever we are trying to discuss in our session today. So I just request you people to share your name and your contact number, where I can reach it out to you people so that I can share the document that I'm trying to share it over here. Okay, it is just a request. If you do not want to share, that is like again okay, but it's just a request so that I can share you the documents. Okay, so this was all about the Playwright architecture that we have discussed. In terms of our second goal that we have is to understand like what is the advantage of Playwright. Let's quickly go through with that as well. So first thing that we have in terms of Playwright is Playwright basically enables end-to-end testing for modern web application with auto waiting capacity. So if you people have worked on any of the tools earlier, let's say example Selenium, you might be knowing that to do some kind of action on any of the element, we basically have to check whether the element have been loaded or not. That means element have been loaded on the page and it is visible, then only we'll be able to do some kind of actions. And for that, we basically have to provide or use implicit wait or explicit wait. To write the implicit wait and explicit wait, we also have to basically write some kind of code in terms of waiting for an element to do some kind of actions, right? And those kind of things have been automatically handled by the Playwright. That means we do not have to write any implicit code or explicit code in terms of uh, waiting for an element by using Playwright. Playwright will automatically able to handle such scenarios, which is automatic waiting. That means Playwright have a default timeout of 30 seconds. If it is not able to find the element within 30 seconds, then it will throw you an error. If it is able to find an element within 30 seconds, then it will keep on executing your code. You basically, or specifically, you do not have to write any lines of code to check whether the element have been loaded or not. Okay, so here, if you talk about what is the advantage over here, you might have seen stale element exception sometimes. That is being removed if you use Playwright automatically. Second advantage that we have, it works on major browser, which Selenium also does, which is like Chrome, Edge, Firefox, Safari, Opera, and so on. It also operates on different operating system. This is also similar to a Selenium that we have. Selenium also works on Windows, Mac, and Linux. Whereas in terms of Playwright, the same code that we write for the web automation, it also works on the native browser of the mobile. That means Android. That means if you are using Android browser and if you want to uh, run the same code that you have written for web automation, will automatically work on the Google Chrome browser of the Android and Safari browser of the mobile iOS. Okay. Uh, okay. Then the main advantage that we have over Cypress. Cypress is also one of a automation tool, which is not similar to the Playwright, but it is like almost close to the Playwright. But there are again some disadvantages. In terms of one disadvantage that we have in terms of Cypress is Cypress works on only JavaScript, whereas Playwright works on different other technologies, which is like JavaScript, TypeScript, Java, Python, C Sharp, and so on. It is similar to Selenium that we have, where we can select any of the languages in terms of writing the test case. Couple of other advantages that we have, I'll quickly finish it off, which is like Playwright have some of the tools that it has given. One of them is known as traces. Traces is a complete log file. If you have worked on Selenium, like those people who have worked on Selenium might be knowing that to generate a log, we basically have to integrate with third-party tool, which is known as Log4j, right? So in terms of Log4j, we have to integrate with our code. Then we have to write again steps where we are trying to generate the logs and so on. Whereas Playwright automatically generates each and every lines of execution of like all the logs. It will automatically generate in terms of whenever we work on Playwright. Second, it also automatically take this screenshot of each and every lines of execution. And third, it also automatically take or generate the video recording of the test case that we are trying to run with. Okay, what is meant by that is, um, okay. So what is meant by that is, uh, so if you have worked on Selenium, you might be knowing that you have to basically use third-party tool known as commons.io to take this screenshot. After integrating commons.io, you again have to write 4 or 5 lines of code, or at least like few lines of codes to convert that into some format and then attach to the report that you want to share it with, right? Whereas we do not have to write even a single line of code to take this screenshot, even a single line of code to generate the videos recording. And also, that means it automatically generates the screenshot, automatically generates the video recording of the test execution. Also, it also automatically generates the retry. That means retry of the test cases. What is in the retry? Sometimes what happens is, sometimes due to some kind of environment issues, some test case will get failed, but those will not be a real time failure, right? That means that is not a real time bug, kind of real bug kind of. So what in general happen is, we again have to retry means rerun the same test case which have already been failed. Playwright automatically also take care of those things. We do not have to write even a single line of code to retry the failed test cases. In terms of Selenium, we again have to use like itest run like one of a interface that we have in terms of Selenium to write, like again use that and then write few lines of code, and then we can basically take care of the test retry kind of. Whereas in terms of Playwright, it automatically does everything. We can set it up in terms of the configuration file itself. We do not have to write even a single line of code. And as I talked about logging mechanism, traces will generate complete each and every lines of execution details along with the screenshot as well. So this is again one of the powerful tools that we have in terms of Playwright. We again do not have to integrate with any of the third-party tool. By just installing or integrating the Playwright, it will be able to handle everything. We also have one tool known as Inspector, which is very helpful in terms of debugging. So what in general this Inspector tool does is, I'll show you in our session today, but the use of this is like you will be able to see each and every lines of execution, what happened before executing the code and what happened after executing the code. I'll talk about this once we go through with this in our session today. Um, Then Playwright has one more advantage where we have a built-in API support. That means we will also be, along with the web automation, we'll also be able to do API automation using the same Playwright. Using the same Playwright, we'll also be able to handle the API automation as well. Sometimes what happens is, sometimes in terms of web automation, we'll have some scenario where we have to take care of or take the help of API automation to check whether our application is working or not. Example, let's say we are working on an e-commerce website. I have my own user ID and you people have some own like your user ID again. Let's say I have logged it into my account by using my user ID, and I want to access someone else's account. At that point of time, it will be helpful. Like we basically have to take the help of API testing, API automation, so that we can check whether I am able to access some other's account or not. Okay, so those kind of validation we can easily do by using Playwright. Whereas in terms of Selenium, again we have to depend on Rest Assured, which is a library of a Java which used to do an API automation. Okay. Um, if you have worked on Selenium, you might be knowing there is a tool known as Selenium IDE, which generates the code on fly, right? In terms of Playwright, also we have a code gen tool, which is a advanced version and much better than Selenium IDE that we have. It also generates the code and will convert into whatever the library that you want to. Example, if you want to work on Java using TestNG, it will convert the code into Java using TestNG. If you want to work on JavaScript, it will automatically convert your code into the JavaScript and so on. You'll just have to select the language. Okay, so this code gen is another tool that Playwright has given, which generates the code by just recording the actions that we follow. Okay, so these are few of the advantages that we have in terms of Playwright, and there are many more. Once we start our session, probably we can go through with that, like what are the other advantages that we have in terms of Playwright. Okay, so with this, we'll move to the next agenda of our session, which is like installation of Playwright. And first, we'll see the prerequisite. So, what are the prerequisites that we have to work with Playwright? Okay, so if you talk about the prerequisite, in general, if you have like few of the person have mentioned that they have worked on Selenium, so you might be knowing that you have to first install Java. You have to set Java into environment variable, and then you again have to install Maven. Then you have to create like project. You have to create a basically create a file which is known as pom.xml, where you again go to the Maven repository and find out all the jars that you have to install. That means you have to just provide the installation path inside your pom.xml, and it will be able to install all your jars or library that you want to install, right? So these are again a bit tedious process in terms of for a freshers, like they'll have to understand the process. How do you have to install the complete process of installing Selenium project or Selenium framework for any kind of framework if you're using Selenium. Whereas in terms of Playwright, it is again very, very simple. Even a freshers on a very first day, within an hour, will be able to install the complete Playwright setup. The first prerequisite is we need to have in our system, we need to have Node.js installed. Okay. First is Node.js. Okay. Along with this Node.js, we also have to have npm installed. So where the first prerequisite is I'll talk about in detail is like Node.js and npm, and second is we need to have an editor, any editor. What is editor? Where we basically write our code. So in terms of JavaScript or TypeScript using Playwright, we generally follow Visual Studio Code, which is Playwright have also been developed by Microsoft, and Visual Studio Code, which is one of the editor, which I have just shown you earlier, which is this one. This one is known as a Visual Studio Code. Is have also been developed by the Microsoft itself. Okay, so these are the two prerequisites that we need to have to start with Playwright, and after that we need to install Playwright. Okay, so these are three steps. After this, we'll be ready for writing on any of the codes in terms of Playwright, test cases in terms of Playwright. So first thing is Node.js. I earlier talked about what is Node.js. I have also given in terms of the document, which is Node.js is basically an open source cross-platform backend JavaScript runtime environment which executes JavaScript code. This is similar to JRE that we have, which used to run our Java code in JVM, which is Java Virtual Machine. So we basically have to have Node.js installed in our system, and then one of a editor, which is Visual Studio Code. So whenever we have, I also talked about we need to have npm. Npm stands for Node Packaging Manager. Node Packaging Manager, which is used to manage all the uh, basically packages which have been developed using Node.js. And what is Node.js? Is basically a backend runtime environment. Okay, so as soon as we install Node.js, npm will automatically be installed. We do not have to install npm separately. As soon as we install Node.js, npm will automatically be installed. Okay, and then second, Visual Studio Code. I'll just show you the simple step. I'll not execute anything right now. I'll just show you the simple step that we have to install the Node.js. You just have to go to any of the browser that you are using and search Node.js download. You can go to Node.js download Node.js. Go to pre-built installer. On this particular page, you go to a pre-built installer and then just click on this one. If you are using, I am currently using Windows, so it is automatically able to identify. If you are using MacBook, then also it will be able to automatically identify. You just have to click on download Node.js and it will open a tool, open basically a one of a tool which will ask you to set up. Okay, so it will have like four, 5 times you have to click on next, 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 and so on. And at the end, it will say you finish. Okay, and as soon as you install this, npm will also be automatically installed. You do not have to install the npm. And how do you have to verify? So let me show you that as well step. It will not take couple of couple of minutes of time. Let's see if it is executing faster. So it has automatically also downloaded. Let's open it. So it will be basically an executable file, which will open like this, a software kind of, where I have already set up everything inside the system. But in terms of your system, you have to basically click on next, next, next few times. As you can see here, you just have to click next, accept this, again click on next, click on next, click on next. You don't have to do anything. You can click on automatically install this and again click on next, and it will then it will ask you to install. It will ask you to give a permission, which is yes over here. You can click on yes and it will start executing. I'm just canceling because I already have it installed. And at the end, you will see this finish button. So you just have to click finish. And with this, we are ready with our Node.js installation. How do you have to verify it? You can go to command prompt if you're working on Windows. If you're working on a MacBook, then you can go to terminal and then search node space hyphen hyphen version. If it is able to display some kind of value, that means the Node.js have been successfully installed. And as I talked about earlier, for the npm, you also have to do similar things by saying npm space hyphen hyphen version to check whether it has also been installed or not. So it will automatically be installed along with the Node.js. Okay. As soon as the Node.js have been installed, you do not have to set up or set the path into the environment variable. It will automatically do everything for us. Okay. Second step is just to install Visual Studio Code. It is again similar process where it will you can go to a browser, search for Visual Studio Code download. You can go to code.visualstudiocode.com and it will, based on your operating system, you can click on this. It will again open a executable file where you can click on next, 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 and at the end, it will ask you to click on finish after the installation. And as soon as it install completely, you will get this kind of window for the first time. This kind of window for the first time, where you will also get a welcome screen on the for the first time. Okay, from the next time onwards, you will not get, but for the first time, you'll get a welcome screen over here. Okay, so for the prerequisite part, we are completely done now. The only thing that requires is Node.js and the editor that we require to write the code. Okay, and now we are ready for Playwright installation. Okay, let's see how easy in terms of the Playwright uh, installation is. I have also given each and every lines of details in terms of this documentation. I'll share it with you. If you can share your name and contact number so that I can forward this document. So if you see now, we basically have to install the Playwright dependency. So what happened? In terms of Playwright, we now have to install. So what happened in terms of installation is We'll go to the editor that we have recently installed. And first thing that we have to cover is whenever we try to write, even in terms of practicing, we basically have to create a folder inside our system, right? We basically create some folder at any of the point. We basically create our folder where we can store our code, right? In the same way, we also have to do the same things over here. So first we'll create a folder where we can, I say, um, so I have created a folder, Playwright. So I've just created a folder known as Playwright. Um, anyone is trying to ask anything? Okay.
Hi. See, is IntelliJ okay instead of Visual Studio Editor?
IntelliJ is also okay,
Mhm.
but in terms of if you are working on JavaScript or TypeScript, it is always suggestible to use Visual Studio Code. It works in a much friendlier way, much better way
Okay.
than like IntelliJ. But there is no
Okay.
restriction that we cannot use. Much
Mhm.
much usable and much friendlier is Visual Studio Code
Okay. Thank you.
for JavaScript and TypeScript. Okay. So let's come back to our things that we were trying to discuss. So I've just created a folder around 30 minutes ago before our session starts. So I've given a name as PW Workshop. That means Playwright Workshop October, and I'll just select it over here. So what we have to do is we basically have to create a folder and open the folder over here so that we can store all our code, whatever we will be writing going forward. Okay. I'll also give you the complete details of how the Visual Studio Code work, like this Visual Studio Code editor works, but in the later sessions, probably will not get time to go through the complete details of this. Few of the things I'll explain it over here. So first thing that we see is known as Explorer, where you will see the complete details whenever we start writing the code. For the first time, it is saying open folder. I've already created a folder, so I can directly jump to there. Uh, if you let's say if you have not done that, then you can create a folder anywhere inside your system, and then from there you can select it out. I have just created this, so I'm just selecting this. So what I have given is pw hyphen workshop hyphen October, and I'm just selecting a folder by clicking on select folder, and you'll see that it will open a folder that we have just created. So this became your project name now. Okay, this is basically a folder that we have created is also known as a project name that we have given for the folder. There are a couple of things that we see here. One is known as new file. If you click on this, it will create a new file inside the folder. If you click on this new folder, then it will create a new folder inside the folder, and this is for refreshing the Explorer. Okay. Now, if you go through with the documentation, it says that create a directory in your system and use the below code to start with the Playwright. This is npm init Playwright. Okay. So now we have just created a folder. We have to open terminal over here, which is a console terminal. There are three ways you can open the terminal. One is as soon as you enter into this Visual Studio Code, you will see this option over here, which will say upon hover, it will select no problems. You can click on this and then go to terminal. This is one way. Second way is you can go to view and click on terminal. Third way is you can click on this menu, hamburger menu, and then click on terminal and click on new terminal. It will open the terminal. Okay. This is also known as console or terminal, where we will be writing some kind of command, or at the time of executing the code, we'll take the help of terminal. If you like have a few of the people have already worked on Selenium, so they might be knowing how do we run by using mvn clean install or nvm test, some kind of clean test kind of things. Okay, so to install the Playwright, the complete dependency of the Playwright, the complete Playwright framework, we have the three words of command, which is npm init Playwright. npm, earlier I said, this is known as Node Packaging Manager. Init, the full form is initialize, and then Playwright. So the complete command that you see over here, it says that npm, that means node packaging manager, initialize. What we have to initialize? A Playwright. Okay, so that's it. This is one command which will install your complete framework of Playwright. You do not have to install anything going forward in terms of working with Playwright. We'll see one third-party tool that we have to install in the later section for Allure reporting. But apart from that, you do not have to install any other things for using, especially working with Playwright framework. Okay, I've just given npm init Playwright and click enter. It will start installing the complete dependency of the Playwright. It will not take more than 10 seconds of time to install completely. For the first time installation, it will ask a couple of questions whether we want to use TypeScript or JavaScript. We can select any of the language that we want to select, which I'm currently selecting JavaScript for now. So I've just selected by using up arrow or down arrow. You can select it out. I'm selecting JavaScript as a language. It is also asking where do you want to put the complete test case. That means what folder I should create for you to basically write your all the test case. By default, it is saying test. I'll leave it as it is displaying. It is also saying do you want to add GitHub actions, which is like for CI/CD pipeline. I'll make it as false right now. That means I do not require it for our current session. And then it basically asks whether do you want to install the browser as well. So I'm just saying as true. And as soon as I hit enter, you will see like everything, it will start installing in terms of the Playwright, whatever it requires. Whatever in generally we have to work with Playwright, it will install each and every details. It will not take more than 30 seconds of time. Probably my computer, like laptop, is very slow today, so it might take a little bit more seconds. But if you try to do that, you can check it out. It will not take more than 30 seconds to install the complete Playwright framework, set up everything that we require to start with Playwright. Okay, one advantage that I was trying to discuss, I will let it install. Might take like a few seconds of time. By then, I'll try to explain you one more thing. So see, one advantage in terms of using the Playwright is, as it says, it also work on Safari. We know that Safari browser is a native browser for MacBook. I do not have Safari browser installed in our system, which I am currently working on Windows operating system. So I do not have Safari browser. Though you do not have Safari browser, you will still be able to run your code in Windows operating system on Safari browser as well. You do not need any of the browser to be installed in your system to work with Playwright automation. Okay, that means you do not even require a Google Chrome to be installed to work with the Playwright to like run your test case on Google Chrome or anything. I do not have Safari browser. I'll show you that it works on the Safari browser as well. So you see, like within like few seconds of time, it has completely installed the Playwright. It says that, how do I know? Because it says successfully created a Playwright test project at so and so location. It also have given few of the commands, which is very helpful. We'll go through with that as well. And if you see at the end, which is known as happy hacking, that means the Playwright installation have been completely successful. Okay. Now with this, we have completely installed the Playwright. We do not have to install anything. We do not have to depend on any of the third party. And you see here earlier it was empty, and now we see few of the files that we have over here. One is node modules, where you will see like what are the jars that it has installed. This is basically a heart of the project. If you delete this, that means there is nothing left out in terms of Playwright. So this is basically a heart of the project. And then there is something known as playwright.config.js. This is basically a test runner file. For now, I'll not go in detail. There are a few of the things that we have to understand. But this basically works as a test runner files. You see, it asks us few of the questions, that what kind of language that you want to use. So it has given an extension as we have used JavaScript. So we can say like playwright.config.js. And the second question was, where do you want to store your test case? So it has put the test directory over here using by saying test folder, and it has also generated a test folder where we'll be writing the complete test cases. One more test file that they have generated is a example test that they have given. There are like 30 odd number of test cases. We do not require for now. I'll just delete it on. You can basically keep inside your system if you are like going through side by side, and you can check it out later what are the things that they have given. Inside the test folder also they have given one example that how do we write basically the test case. We'll see in the next couple of minutes. And apart from that, there are a couple of other files as well. One is package-log.json, which we do not have to touch anytimes. It gives the complete details of what are the packages and the jars that it has installed. So it has till now installed Playwright and Node.js. How do I know that? So if you go to package.json, if you go to package.json, then you'll see like it has installed Playwright and Node.js till now. Okay. Any question? Okay. I'd request people to share your contact number and the name so that it will be helpful for us in terms of signing the document. Okay, so these are the things that Playwright has installed. We did not do anything. It had just installed by just following a command, which is npm init Playwright. Okay, now let's see how do we write the test case in terms of Playwright. So it has given one example over here, which says that how do we start writing the test case? Okay, so let's say an example that we have is, let me delete the second one, remove it from here. So in terms of working with any of the things, we basically have to first line of code will go this one. This is okay. So this line of code that you see, which says that const test expect from this basically is importing the Playwright that we have installed over here. So we have installed the Playwright. So it is importing the Playwright folder so that we can write our test case. So this first line that you see, this is basically importing Playwright. And from Playwright, it is trying to import a test function and expect function. This will be a first line of code whenever we create any new file to write our test case in terms of Playwright. What is the advantage of this is, or why it is necessary is, so that we'll be able to write the test case using Playwright. This test function is helpful in terms of writing the test. If you see the definition, it says that these tests are executed in a Playwright environment. That means whenever we whenever we import the test function and expect function are available inside Playwright test module. This basically helps us in writing the test. How do we write the test case or the test automation in terms of Playwright? By using this test function. If you hover on this, it says that it declares a test. This expect function that you see over here, if you hover on this expect, it basically used for writing the assertion. That means what is assertion basically? Assertion is we basically have to whenever we write a test case, we also have to check whether our test case have been passed or failed, right? So to verify that, we have to write the assertion. In terms of Selenium, if you have worked on, you might be knowing we take the help of either JUnit or TestNG to write the assertion. In the same way, Playwright do not take the help of any third-party tool. It already had a function known as expect, which does the work of assertion. Okay, let's try to understand few of the things from here. So this test is a function which is helpful in terms of writing the test case. And this test function takes couple of parameters. So whenever we have to write a new line, so you see one test case over here, it had started from here and then ended over here. Now again, if you have to write the next test case in the same folder, you can again write in the same structure by using a test function, and you can provide some title. I'll explain you what are these details, and then we'll write a few lines of test automation. So this, and again, let's say if you have to you have to write the new test case, you have to write again by following the same structure that we have over here. So this test function basically help us in writing the test case. it it basically have couple of mandatory parameter. One is a title, which will be a unique for each and every test case, and then one will be a body, which will be a function, and inside the function will be writing the complete details of the test type. Okay, so let me remove other things. Inside this, if you see, this is a test case. So let's declare it as a basic test that I'll be performing. So I've just given a title as basic test, and this here you see a function. This is basically a asynchronous function. This is also known as arrow function in JavaScript. We'll explain you in the later sessions where we discuss like what is JavaScript and JavaScript complete details of JavaScript. There we can basically understand how do we write the arrow function. This is basically an arrow function. By using an arrow function, we'll be writing the test case. All these things will be taken care in terms of our courses. And then we have one keyword known as async. So what this async says that is this function that we are trying to write is an asynchronous. Why are we saying like that is because we know that JavaScript is an asynchronous language. What is meant by asynchronous? Let's say if you have a different line of code. Example, the first will be whenever we try to automate any things in terms of either manually, let's say if you are doing manual testing, also we have to follow the same things, which is launch the URL will be the first test case. Second step might be fill the username and password, and third might be, let's say, click on login button, right? Let's say click on login button. So in general, if we talk about Java is basically a synchronous language. In terms of test automation as well, we expect first line will be executed as launch the URL. Second line should have to go as fill the username and password, and third line have to go as click on login button, right? But in general, in JavaScript or TypeScript are basically asynchronous language. That means it will not guarantee you that the first line of code, whatever we have written, will be executed at first time. It can try to execute the last line of code that we have written, which is click on login button for the first step as well. That means as it is an asynchronous, so it can execute the last step as a first and second step as a second, or it can also try to execute this line of code at the last, or it can also be a situation where all the steps will try to execute at the same time. That is what known as asynchronous. That means it is not a synchronous. Synchronous is step by step or line by line, whereas asynchronous does not guarantee you that it will be executed in terms of line by line. That is where we come up with a solution using async and await keyword. Async says that this is an asynchronous function, and await says that we basically have to prefix await for all the lines, and as soon as we do this, this will basically guarantee us that the first line of code will be executed first, second line of code will be executed second, and so on. That means it will make the asynchronous process to follow in a synchronous way. Okay, so that's where we will see in terms of Playwright, for each and every line of code we'll be declaring await, and async will be declaring for the function once. Okay, so now let's see a basic test that we'll try to write. I have one application that I have opened it over here, which I have as a practice form. Let's see, let's go with this one where we basically have to, let's say we have this one where we have a student registration form. Okay, so here we'll basically try to follow few of the things let me see if I have something over here. Okay, so let's say if we have text box over here, so how do we fill the elements inside the text box? Okay, so example, we have this particular URL. So first line of code, I'll go like one by one, and then we'll try to explain you what we have to do. The thing is, we basically, this is the URL that we have to launch. So first is we have to launch the URL. Then I'll just fill a full name. Let's say Kumar example, and then I'll click on submit button. As soon as I click on submit button, it displays some kind of value over here, right? It basically display whatever the name that we have declared over here. So we have to just fill, that means enter the some kind of value inside this text box. We'll click on the submit button, and we'll also validate whether the value that we have entered have been really displayed over here or not. That means we'll also do an assertion part. Okay, so first let's go one by one where we have to launch the URL. Okay, one more thing that I wanted to explain you is this page. You see, this page is declared inside a curly braces. That means this is coming from Playwright. This page says that this is a fixture available inside a Playwright. What is fixture? Is a special code. It used to be a special method which does some kind of operations. So whenever we write a method or a function, what do we do inside a function? We write some lines of code, some set of instruction, so that it will become a method to do some kind of operation, right? In the same way, Playwright has given as a fixture, which is a special line of code, a special methods or a function that they have declared to do some kind of action. What this page does is it creates an instance of the browser and open the page. What is meant by that? So let's say we have this one, right? This is basically a incognito browser of Google Chrome. So whenever we use a page, this will open a incognito mode of browser. That means what is incognito? It will not have any cache or cookies automatically available. So this will have an incognito mode of page. It will initiate. You can see the definition. It says that isolate page instance and created for each test case. That means it will create the instance for the browser that we have declared inside the configuration file. What is configuration file? Inside this playwright.config.js, we have given few browser over here. We have not directly given that. Like at the time of installation itself, it has given by default these three, and it has also given the other details, which is mobile Chrome, mobile Safari, Microsoft Edge, and Google Chrome as well. Whatever it requires in terms of our project, we can enable or disable from here. Okay, so we did not declare it automatically installed at the time of installing the Playwright. So whatever the browser that we are trying to use, it will create a basically instance of the browser, and it will also create a page. Okay, so first things that we see over here is in terms of this is the URL that we have to launch. So in terms of now, this becomes your complete control. This fixture is having complete details of the Playwright methods that it has inside the Playwright. Now by using this page itself, we will be able to use all the methods that Playwright has given. Okay, so we have one particular method known as goto. Goto is a method which is used to launch the URL. It takes a parameter as a string format. If you hover on this, it says that it returns the main resource response. That means it basically takes a URL as a string parameter, and this will launch the URL on the specific browser that we want to create. Now, this is the first one. Second thing is we basically have to identify, even in terms of manual testing, if you are trying to do a manual testing of this particular page, what you will do is you'll first launch the URL. You will have to identify where is the full name, and there we can provide the full name. Right? So we basically have to identify where is the full name. That means where is the element available, so that I can write the locators, or I can write the values, or fill the or enter the values in terms of manual testing, right? The same way we have to, what we are trying to do in terms of automation is whatever we are trying to do in terms of manual, we are just trying to convert that in terms of the automation, in terms of scripting. Okay. So first we have to also identify where is the full name available. So what we have to do is we have to write a locator for this. So in terms of automation, we say as a locator. In terms of manual testing, we say that, okay, where is the full name element available? Or where, I'm so sorry. Or where is the field available so that I can enter the text. Okay. So for that, we have to right click on the page, click on inspect, go to the elements, and then you can click on this arrow that you see over here. You can click on this and hover on the field wherever you want to identify the element. And we see that there are a couple of so you see this one, right? This is able to highlight inside the DOM. This is DOM. I'll discuss in the later part what is DOM basically. So this element is having few properties, which is one is having placeholder, one is ID, and so on. So let's write with ID that we have over here. If we talk about like Playwright or writing the locators, Playwright also follows the similar set of things that we follow in terms of Selenium, which is by using CSS selector as well as by following XPath. And Playwright has also given few of the default method. By using that also we'll be able to write the locators. So for now, I'll just go along with the XPath that we have. So we have ID over here, which says that username, and we also have a tag name, which is input available over here. I'll explain you again all these DOM elements in detail in the later part of the sessions whenever we start, like again demo part or another workshop. Okay, so how do we write an XPath is, let's say by using double slash and then tag name, and then we can say it as @ID equals to, inside a single quote we can write the value that we have for ID. So we have ID, we have tag name as input, and ID equals to username. That is what we have given over here, and it says that one of one element is matching. That means there are only one element basically matching over here. So we can again go to the editor and write first line. First will be await, and then page dot, we have a method known as locator. Everything in terms of Playwright has given in a simple word. So it has given a locator to write the basically locator for an element. It accepts a selector as a string that we can see over here, and few others that we'll discuss in the later part. So first and mandatory things is to accept a selector in string format. That means how do we declare a string in JavaScript? We write a string by either using a single quote or double quote. For now, I'll just write double quote, and whatever the XPath that we have written over here, I have just given. And now what we have to do, we basically have to enter something over here. So let's say if I'm just trying to enter test example, let's say test. So we have to enter a test value inside this field. For that, we have a method. In terms of Selenium, we have send keys. In terms of Playwright, we basically, what we have to do in general term, we have to fill the text over here, which is test. So Playwright has given a method, one method known as fill, to enter the value inside the text box. Okay, so by using a fill method, we'll be basically set a value to the input field. That means we can enter the text, whatever the text value that we want to enter on the text box by using fill method. So I've just entered a test value over here for now. Okay, I hope you people are able to follow the session. And then the next thing, as I said earlier, so I have just filled it, and I'll now click on submit button. So for clicking on submit button also, we have to identify the element. That means we have to write the locator. So for this also, I'll try to install. We also have ID available over here, which says that a submit. So let's say I'll just write in terms of the CSS selector this time. So if you have ID, available as an attribute for any of the element. How do we write the CSS selector is by just writing hash and then ID value, whatever the ID value it is having. You can see it is also able to identify one. If you have class name, then you can take the help of directly dot and then the class name you can enter it over here. Currently you have ID as an attribute, so I'm just going with hash and then ID value that I have given. We again will be using a locator as we are trying to identify an element. So we'll just write a locator and then dot. On any of the element, if you just want to click on an element, we have a method similar to Selenium, which is click. To click an element, if you hover on this, it says that it clicks an element. Okay, so now what we have to do is we have basically clicked on this. So as soon as we click here, we have to validate. That means we have to do an assertion that this element is appearing on the page or not, or whether this locators or this value is appear on the page after clicking on submit button or not. Okay, so we again have one value over here, which is ID. So I'll just try to write in the same way, which is hash by following the CSS selector and ID, which is able to identify uniquely over here. How do I know uniquely is one of one. That means only one element is matching over here. Now what we are trying to do, we are basically trying to do an assertion saying that whether this text have appeared on the page or not. Okay, we are trying to understand whether this page has appeared on the this text has appeared on the page after clicking on submit button or not. Okay, so earlier, as I told you earlier, whenever we have to write the assertion, we have to take the help of expect function. So here we'll try to write the assertion by using expect function. If you hover on this, it just says that it has imported a expect function from Playwright test module, and the use of this expect function is basically take few of the parameters and it will just validate whatever the validation that we have to do. So first thing we have to write is inside the expect, we basically have to identify the element first. So to identify the element, that means we have to write the locator for this particular element. And for that, we have written a locator, which is hash name. Okay. Again, we have to write a page.locator, and then we can directly say this one. So what we are trying to do, we are just trying to validate. So what it will do is this will basically identify the element that we are trying to validate. And now we can say that we have something known as a test available, as we have filled the test value over here. So we have test available over here. So we can directly say that this element to contain text. This is a simple value. So what we are simple assertion, what we are trying to do is we are saying assert, that means expect this particular element contains some of the value. So let's say contains this particular value over here. Okay, so what we are trying to do in terms of assertion also, if you see, this is very simple. It is just saying that expect this element contains the text that we are trying to identify. Okay, so this is a simple, a general step that we have followed over here to write a simple test case. And let's try to execute the code and see whether it is working or not. At the time of installation of the Playwright, we had seen that it has given few of the commands as well. Now it will be very helpful. So to run the test case, if you want to run entire test case, we currently have only one test case, so that doesn't mean anything. If you have, like, let's say 1,000 test cases, and if you want to run all the test case, then we can basically give a command as npx playwright test, which will run all the test case that we have written till now. So I'll just provide, as we have only one single, so I'm just trying to give npx playwright test -- headed, as Playwright automatically runs our code in headless mode. So I've just given headed over here so that we can see the execution as well. Okay, so you see this has launched on 3 different browsers. This is Google Chrome, that was the other one was Safari, and this is Safari, and this is Firefox. Okay, so if you see this one, this is Safari and this is Firefox browser. You see this one, basically I do not have Safari browser in my system, but still it is able to uh, you know uh, run our code on the Safari browser. Okay, so and this is again a Firefox browser. So you see there was some kind of issues in terms of the Safari browser we have seen. That's where it has basically marked the test case as failed due to a slowness of my system. Let me run on a single browser for now. I'll just run it on a single browser, which is Chrome, to show you that how this test case is running. Uh, I'll show you on the different browser as well. Let's try to run now on a single browser, which we are trying to say as a Chromium. So I've just given npx playwright test, and it will start running it will basically open the Chromium browser. Not sure why my system is very slow today. If any one of you are trying to execute side by side, you can just check it out. I believe like my system is very slow today, so it is getting stuck. Let me terminate. So it has launched the browser. You see it has filled the test and it also marked it as passed. That means everything have been successfully completed in terms of the test. Now, how do I know that? I'll just open the report that it has generated. So for report opening, it has also given the command over here, which says that npx playwright show report. If you directly click on enter the command that it has given, okay, so there is some other port is running on this. Show report. I believe there is another one running. Okay, let me show you other things that I have earlier discussed, which is by using the UI part. So hyphen hyphen UI. If you give hyphen hyphen UI, it will open a Playwright, one other Playwright tool. So this is known as an inspector tool. From here also you will be able to run the test case. If you click on this, it will run all the test case that you have. It will not open any browser, but every execution you will be able to see over here. Earlier I discussed that using the inspector tool of Playwright, you will be able to see each and every details, every lines of execution of the code. Over here, you will see what kind of action that we are trying to do. You will also see what happened before, what happened after each and every lines of execution of the code. What happened before the execution, what happened after the execution. Let it finish, and then we'll see what is happening over here. So it says that failed due to some issues in my system. Let me run it out. My system is very slow today. Again failed. Okay, now this time it looks have been passed. Now see, earlier I discussed regarding the inspector tool. Now you'll see like what happened before. We are trying to use a page fixture over here, right? So if you have seen over here, we have used a page fixture inside this. So if you see, this one is a page fixture. This is also a special method which first create a browser instance and a context and also create a page. So that means a fresh page will be launched on the browser, whatever the browser that we are trying to work on. Now it is trying to load the URL. Now you see before what happened, nothing happened. But after, if you see, after execution of this line of code, you will see that it basically launched the URL over here. Before, nothing happened, but after it launched the URL. That means after execution of this step, it basically launched the particular URL that we had given. Now in the next, if you try to see over here for the next line of execution, you see that it is highlighting that the next action will be performed on this particular element. What happened before? Nothing. But what happened after? You see that it basically filled the value that we have given. Again, if you go back to the action for the next line of code, it says that it will do some kind of action on this particular element. What happened before? Nothing. What happened after? It basically clicked on submit button so that this particular text has been displayed. In terms of assertion, if you see, it says that it has asserted the value that we wanted to do. In terms of action, we can see like the next action will be performed on this. What happened before? Nothing. What happened after? It basically performed the assertion over here. Every network call details, every console log details, all the console log details also it will display. If there are any kind of error, it will also show it over here. You see, we have not given any, we have not written any line of code to take the screenshot or take the recording. It basically taking the screenshot on each and every lines of execution. You see, every lines of code, it has taken the complete screenshot of the page as well. Okay, so this is what the use of Playwright inspector tool, which is also helpful in terms of debugging. It also generates why the test case have been failed, what will be the solution for the failed test case or the failed step. Okay, I think we are currently sort of time, so I'll stop it over here in terms of our workshop today, and I'll take it like next 5 to 10 minutes of time. If you have any questions to ask, feel free to ask any kind of questions if you have. Over to you people now. Any questions, anything that you want to ask, you can feel free to ask. I just request if you people have not shared your contact number and name, please feel free to share so that I can share you the document. Yes,
I believe it's an open source tool, right?
it's a completely open source.
So one version to another version, if the migration of the scripts will, for example, in regression scripts, always there will be some changes. What would be the change effort, changing scripts effort compared to Selenium?
This is very easy. As I have just shown you the UI part, which is like inspector part of the Playwright tool, you can directly jump it over here. Whatever the script that it has failed, it will also suggest you what has been failed and why it has been failed, and what you can do to improve the test failure. The effort will be very less, even though if we are going for like page object model framework or we are going for BDD Cucumber. In both of the case, the effort will be very less. In terms of page object model, we'll be writing a page by page. So effort will be again very, very simple because you know that where your test case have been failed. Second thing, as I discussed in our session, sometimes what happens is like the failure will be a false failure due to some kind of network issues or environmental issues. So it will automatically try to rerun our test case. If it is not able to rerun, then we can directly jump to the failure by using the report and try to debug the scenarios, which is like debugging is very helpful, as I have just given you the example. So effort will be very less. I'd say like I've worked on like entire like all the available major tools available in the market currently, starting with Selenium, Cypress, Playwright, and then other UI tools, which is like Kotlin and all. Other things, which is a Selenium IDE, and then other available as well. So if I talk about the debug like regression kind of things, the minimal effort will be there if you consider like Selenium. Uh, if you just compare with Selenium and Cypress, the effort will be very less in terms of Playwright. Does it answer your question?
Yes, absolutely. It's a brilliant answer. Thanks.
Okay. Okay.
Hey Praveen, and will
Any?
it support record and playback?
Yes, it does. It
Okay.
does.
And
I talked about earlier, which is known as CodeGen tool, right? So to open the CodeGen tool, also we have one command that it has given earlier. The command is npx CodeGen, and then you can directly give some kind of URL. So let's say http colon slash let's say google.com. Okay, I'll just see it over here. Let me do it out over here. So we have like yes, it also support the codes and code like we have a tool which is known as CodeGen, which also support the record and playback. I'll just show you. Just give me a minute. Uh, Meanwhile, if anyone have any kind of question, please feel free to ask.
Can I integrate into Jenkins for build execution scripts?
Yes, it does support. It does support all the major CI/CD pipeline.
Okay.
Okay, I think I forgot to write it over here. Playwright codes, and then we can directly give HTTPS. Let's say I'm just going through with google.com for now. So what it will do is it will open a tool which is known as a CodeGen tool. So see, you see this one? It has just, this is a tool which has opened over here. It has also imported automatically the things that it has. It had started writing the test function where we see like it launched the URL. Now let's say uh, I'm just trying to click on this, search it for let's say Playwright, then enter Playwright over here, click on this one. Okay, and that's it. And now if you go back to your tool that you have opened it over here, which is this one, you see that everything have been recorded over here. Okay. And you can also do a lot of other things. You see this one, which says that if you want to do an assertion, you can do that. If you want to assert a visibility, like you want to assert some kind of like assert in the sense like assertion part of the things, whether the element have been appeared on the page or not, you can also do assertion. You can also do a validation for a text kind of things. You can also assert a value if you want to validate, and then that's it. So you have just recorded this thing, and you can copy paste in your editor, and it will automatically be imported over here. Everything you can follow some of the other things as well. If you want to take that in terms of Java, Python, .NET, you will be able to do that as well. So if you can directly copy paste this inside any of the folder. So
okay,
let's
I
pause
got
it over
another
here.
question. Yeah, that's
Mhm.
really nice. And I got another question. If I want to work with any rich client applications, something like Salesforce or CRM based or SAP, so do I need to add any plugins installed to work with the record playback? Because those are the complex um, page objects.
Understood. You do not require anything to be installed. You just have to use npx playwright CodeGen and the URL that you want to work with. That's it. You do not have
Even
to install
CRM
any
also,
thought.
yeah, yeah,
Even for
CRM
the
also. It,
CRM also,
yeah, okay,
correct. Even for the CRM also, it will automatically do the things.
that sounds good. Thank you.
Praveen, I have one question. How big that support from public forum for this playwright tool? For example, Selenium, we have a lot of supports available. So, like this,
Right.
do we have more support?
We have we have a playwright community which is
Hmm.
growing currently. but we
Mhm.
also have like lot of supports available. It is not something that you ask someone and they'll not explain you. We have a huge community base for this as well. Playwright is running from the last 5 years in the market, so the
Okay, okay,
community have been grown a lot.
okay,
So you see this one, I have just imported, I've just done the record playback, ran the test case, and it has also passed. So the test, like the record and playback is also powerful in terms of Playwright. Okay. Any other question from anyone?
I believe we can parameterize the things as like any other tool. All the facilities are available, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Okay.
Any question from anyone?
Hi Praveen. Uh,
Yes.
is this record the Flutter-based application? You know that semantic labels not visible.
Shadow DOM element, right? You're talking about.
Flutter-based application.
See, in terms of identifying an element which is not visible,
Mm.
Playwright works in a better way. Flutter-based application, I have never tried, but I
Okay.
have heard from the people that it supports the Flutter-based application as well. I have never tried specially, so I'll not be able to comment. I'll try it out with in like a couple of days, and then probably I can answer you. But from the people I have heard that it also support Flutters.
Okay. I will check it. Thanks. Thanks.
Right. Great.
So, hey, hi
Yes.
Praveen.
Yes.
My question is, so Selenium, like Playwright, do all the things which Selenium do, or any disadvantages over the Selenium with Playwright?
Everything in terms of however we do for the Selenium, it works more than the Selenium as well. As I talked about earlier, like it supports
Mhm,
API automation. Selenium does not support automatically API automation, but Playwright automatically supports the API automation as well. So we should be able to do more than what we can do with Selenium. I do not see any disadvantage of using Playwright than Selenium.
mhm,
In terms of Selenium, we have to use a lot of third-party tool. Like example, a normal taking this screenshot, we have to go with commons.io. Playwright
mhm,
automatically does things. For also for supporting like uh, let's say if you have to generate unit testing kind of, you have to take care of the help of TestNG to write a framework or generate a framework, either TestNG or JUnit.
mhm.
Playwright have built-in support for the test as well. Like it is also known as a test framework. So Playwright is also known as a test framework. By using just a Playwright, you will be able to write everything, each and every details. In terms of test ng or JUnit, we follow like before all, after all, before each, after each. That also Playwright automatically take care of.
Mm-mm. So, in your point of view, Playwright will be the most popular tool in coming years.
Playwright is currently in the demand in the market. Uh, I see like 60 out of like 60% of the job are in the market, which also requires like Selenium, but have
Mhm,
given like if you have knowledge or expertise in Playwright would work. So 60% of the market currently I see is going
mhm,
towards a Playwright. In the few years time, I'd see like the Playwright will be growing in the market, probably can reach 80% of the market as well. I am again not saying that the Selenium will be out from the market in the 5-10 years. It will keep on growing again. It will be still there in for the next 15-20 years. But
mhm.
advantage of Playwright is like most of the organization, most of the people are moving towards Playwright,
Playwright.
seeing the advantage over Selenium.
Mm. Okay, thanks a lot. Yeah.
Great. Yes, Gopinath.
Yeah, Praveen. Actually, I want to know. So browser applications is fine, but so when it is going to the Android or iOS applications, how we can proceed with it?
Right. So if we are talking specifically about mobile app automation, mobile application automation, currently it
Yes.
has not complete support, but the mobile automation part using a Playwright is in the development phase. In
Okay.
the next 6 months or year time, we'll see that the Playwright will also launch for mobile automation as well. Currently, they
Oh,
have given a support for the same code will work on the browser version of the mobile
okay.
without changing anything.
Yeah.
Okay.
So browser it will be same, right? So yeah. So I want to know about the mobile apps directly. Okay,
Right.
it
So
is.
mobile app support is not given right now, but it is in the development phase currently, and will be given in probably in the 6 month or later 1 year time.
Okay. Okay. Thanks. I got my answer.
Right. Anything else from anyone?